Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to go from the beginning of the class, where I talked about somatics. Remember the first day I showed you this video? You guys remember that? It's not playing right now because I'm setting it up with this so I can do use this as a remote, and so I have some technical difficulties with it playing. But somatics basically is when sound creates form. So this lecture today is what makes us human. What makes us human? Because we are living now in an AI technocratic world. And it's going to become like that every second, increasingly more, right? So my thesis, remember how I talked about creating a thesis? My personal thesis as a teacher is to say art is what makes us human. That's what I'm going to talk about today. And how it is literally the missing link in our education system and why it matters. Okay. So I'm here as your teacher and working here as an art activist. And this class is about art. It's about art as the missing piece of our history. So I started the class out at the very beginning with teaching you guys about the cycles of time. Because in order to understand history, which is written through art, as we know, because there is no photography until, late 1800s, mid 1800s, we get to develop the photography. So all of that time period beforehand is all written through art or through writing. And what happens with writing? It disappears, right? It gets controlled, it gets burnt, in wars. So the remnants of our world is written in stone. And this is the precession of the equinox, and we talked about it a little bit. So it goes backwards in time, and nothing is new under the sun. We are in spiral time. So this is the wheel of time, and we can look back at the time periods, and like I showed you, Leo, the year of Leo, we can estimate was the Egyptian time when, and of course we talked about how it might be dated much later because everything was designated to the lion, right? We have the Sphinx and different things like that. Right now, okay, we are here. So we've gone through, we're going this way, and we're going this way. We're in the age of Pisces right now. We're still in the age of Pisces. And we're heading towards the age of Aquarius. Now the age of Pisces rules religion, and it's Poseidon, and it's Neptune, so it's water. It's everything that connects everything together. It has no boundaries. It's boundaryless. Aquarius, where we're headed, okay, this is Uranus, which rules the sky and the lightning. And it also rules aliens and AI and technology. And it also rules community, meaning we are all one. Pisces, we are all one, but in a mush, in a posh of like, there's no rules, and it's spirituality, and there's Buddhism, and there's Christianity, and there's Islam, and there's so many different religions, right? And everyone's caught up in it. It's very emotional. We're not there. We're leaving that age, okay? So that's what I wanted to show you. And then before that, okay, we were in Aries, right? Because it goes backwards. So we were in Aries, and that's when we had, the Romans was war. So time is written in the stars. And we know this is very scientific. It's actually very mathematical. And not only do we know it, but the ancient cultures knew it too. Somehow they understood this. And this is how the earth wobbles, and this is how the precession of the equinox is calculated. Okay, so what is taught in the schoolroom? Here is a schoolroom, here is a classroom. What is taught in our standardized education system? Nobody is taught about the precession of the equinox. Nobody is taught about how the stars relate to Greek mythology. Sometimes you are, but it's rare, right? Why? Why is art taken out of the equation? Why are all these mystical things that connect all of humanity and all people of every race, religion, sex taken out and eliminated? And that's what art is, the glue that connects everything together. So, does art matter? Does art matter? So, in the beginning of this class, I had you read the introduction to my book. Art is not something that requires skill, it is something that is inherent to humans. Skill is taught, but art is our natural instinct. We have always been making things. That is part of our evolutionary advantage, problem solving and creating. This idea is what makes us human, creating. It is inherent to the human being. The way birds sing, humans create. So each one of you is an artist, just by sitting here and being born. Okay, so art is the missing link. It truly is, in my opinion. So the standard of engagement of art is with the Western historical canon. This is what I've been teaching you guys about, okay? These are all the people who are considered old masters. We focus on them. We do not talk about Asian art, Mesopotamian art, African art. We focused on European-centric viewpoint in this class. You can take a class specifically for these other things, but this is actually because the historical canon focuses on it, all right? So you actually have to go outside of the historical canon to get the other viewpoints. Now, is this art? Yes, we have nods. Good. This is interesting because this, to them, was documentation and life. There is no difference, right? So we talked about how within the art we can see things that are eliminated maybe from your personal, not just the education system, okay? Because the education system isn't the only thing that educates you. It's also your family, it's also your religion, it's also your culture. Sometimes if you come from a split family, you'll get more of a diverse culture, okay? So if you have parents who divorced when you were very young, and you have one side who's extremely religious or one side who's not, then you get to have two different viewpoints or something. And that's interesting. And sometimes if you're just raised in one where you're really forced into one viewpoint, you're not allowed to look outside of that viewpoint. I'm talking about all religions here, not even religions. You could be non-religious and have this happen, right? Atheist also. So then you don't have these contexts. So within art, we can see another story. So when I talk to you about Eve, now there's an entire study, there's an entire study of religious theology. That's what it's called. And within art, you learn religious theology. Okay, so some of you had not heard of Lilith in the story of Adam and Eve. Some of you had, some of you hadn't. I come across this on a regular basis, just talking to people of all different religions, that people do not know Lilith. And yet here it is in our lives, okay? So we have the Apple as the Apple phone. This Apple is not just a made-up thing. It stems from our stories that hit deep into our unconscious, that we are told over and over and over again repetitively since we were little, okay? And that affects us. And so then when we get a phone and it has the symbol of an apple on it, we don't even know why we're drawn to it or attracted to it, or it hits us a certain way. It's subliminal. Understanding more of our history through the art, and this is art too because this is a symbol, makes us smarter, okay? And it makes us conscious, and it makes us less gullible. It makes us less gullible, okay? So we talk about also the feminine, because the feminine, we've been living in a patriarchal society. Now, not all of planet Earth is a patriarchal society. We all know that, right? Because we have the Native Americans in America, that's a matriarchal society. And in other places too, like I travel to Fiji and whatnot, and their places are more matriarchal. But in general, we live in a patriarchal society, right? So when we talk about the feminine, and here today we have the musical artists are using snakes all the time to represent females and sexuality and sin. Constantly. It's constantly in your face. And are you connecting it back to this creation story? You know, it's through symbols and through art that we actually understand how we're being manipulated. So we are being manipulated. So Hollywood, music industry is constantly manipulating us. We don't even know it, okay? And we are all subject to it. So we either are repulsed by it, we're like, I'm not manipulated because I don't like it. That's one reaction, but that doesn't mean it's not affecting you. Okay, so the idea of females as sin, okay, sex as sin has been a big part of our reality, and it is demonstrated in the art through snakes. And we have Medusa, who was raped and killed and beheaded, okay? And she is the most obvious sinful creature, because if you look at her, you will be frozen in time. So these are symbolic archetypes, and yet we're still using them. So the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is comprehensible. Einstein was a genius, and he did not fit into the mold, okay? So when we talk about prehistoric, we talk about places like Easter Island. Remember we talked about Easter Island? Okay, so there is a connection of these great structures in other parts of the world. So Easter Island is connected to Göbekli Tepe. And yet we have deniers of this within the architectural realms, because people don't really want to open up Pandora's box. This is Pandora's box. You open this, and everything that you have learned about your history and is questioned. And so Pandora's box is constantly being kicked. We don't want to open that. But all you have to do is look at the art, and it's open because you're so smart. You can see, okay? So where does our ancient past begin? And it is only through the art that we're able to tell. Okay, now let's take a look at these around the world. Mexico, wasn't Mexico then, but it's Mexico, Egypt, Indonesia. Really places far away from each other on planet Earth have the exact same structures. Okay, and you're going to find this all the time if you study architecture, archaeology. This is also Pandora's box. Okay, so we talked about what are the pyramids, and we talk about energy. So art being something that is so ethereal, it has no boundaries. Art has no boundaries. That means it is everything. Okay, so we look at, when you categorize these pyramids into your classes, this goes under art. And yet, is this art? Or is this peeking into another timeline, into another way of life that is hidden from you and questionable? So the linear timeline is wrong. Okay, we already know that. We've established that in this class, that the linear timeline is wrong. That means we go from point A, we are stupid, we are dumb, we are ignorant, and we develop consciously over time, and we become smarter and smarter and smarter as human beings. All we have to do is look at the art, and we know that that is absolutely incorrect, okay? Because there are different types of intelligence. So here, when we look at the obelisk, for example, we are using this all the time. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, and all these symbols, okay? So primitive is actually could be technologically advanced in a different way. Okay, so Graham Hancock says, if you want to single an epoch and we are not confident the documents we create will survive, which they won't, the best way we can do it is to make a gigantic architecture and build a star map into it that freezes the stars. Okay, there are scientists now who say that if we travel into the future, 3,000 years, what will be remaining? What will be still remaining on planet Earth? The pyramids will. And a few other structures. There's a documentary on it. Your phones won't. Your writings won't. Maybe things in the iCloud and the internet may or may not be. Depends on where we go. So the studies of the stars as an astrological science relating to psychology and the better understanding of ourselves developed in Egypt. And here it is. Developed in Egypt. It is not New Age. This is where we start to look at the stars, and how they affect us psychologically, interpersonally. And then we have the pharaohs of Egypt, right? We talked about the pharaohs of Egypt, and this is something that you need to know. Now, like I said, I'm not really into remembering names and dates. I'm into remembering concepts, big concepts, because that's actually what expands your consciousness in your brain and makes you smarter. So these big concepts are that the female pharaohs were kings. Female pharaohs were kings. There was a matriarchal dynasty, and it came in and went throughout the Egyptian time period. Feminism and the counter movement to the Adam and Eve Lilith story is Hatshepsut. She is the first female in Egypt that we have evidence of, because remember, there's an entire time period that's wiped out with the flood. Okay, so we can't even look at that time period, okay, unless you want to time travel. We can't see it. There's just evidence of it. So we start with Sumeria and ancient Egypt. So all traces of her rule and her reign were erased. And we didn't even learn about her until the 1700s. That means that's a long period of time where a female ruler king was eliminated from our collective awareness as humans. And during that time, during the time before like even she was recognized, women have been sort of despised. There's a despise, okay? Not in today, so it's hard for us to fathom, but when you watch movies and stuff and you see the kings beheading their wives and because they have it's obvious, okay? There was a despise. Okay, thousands of years ago, ancient civilizations turned to the heavens, marveling at the wonders. These ancient people worshipped various gods and often linked their gods with planets in the sky. And we still have that today, right? I keep going back. So we have the archaic, the classical, and the Hellenistic periods of the Greeks. Now, not all the Greeks were anti-feminine either, remember? You could be a mystic, you could have some power as a female, but it was only through actually sort of divorcing yourself from the common way of life and putting yourself in a different position of like a magician. Then you could have some powers. That's kind of a theme. Okay, so we're going to talk about like how everything connects. Every single thing is borrowed from the past. There's not one thing in your life that is not borrowed from the past. And I will even argue AI technology, but we could debate that. Everything else is evident that it is borrowed from our past. So each civilization is a remnant of the civilization before. And we have that with the Renaissance. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's talk about how much the ancient Greeks affect us today. They affect us so much today that poems can be written. But basically, these are the muses, and this in itself is the archetype of art. The muses are the archetype of art. They are the creativity within us. Whether you're a musician, a dancer, a writer, or an artist, the muses cover one of those. And what about fate? What about fate? Because this is before the religious fever. This is before the birth of Jesus Christ. This is before Allah. This is before Buddha, okay? So we have to remember that. We have to be humble to that. This is the beginning, and this is the foundation of all religion, okay? Because this is the concept, do you have fate? Do you have control of your destiny? Or is it written in the stars? Or are you born with this inevitable outcome, this inevitable bad luck, or great luck? Well, it's up to the muses. It's up to the fates, right? These are the fates. They weave your destiny. And in a way, this connects to religion. Do you see how it does? Okay, and a lot of these things are borrowed. Okay, so let me just go back for 1 second. So the word fate traces back to the Latin word fatum, meaning that which has been spoken. First, there was the word. Do you see the connections? I'm just pointing them out to you. Okay, so let's talk about math. Who likes math? You like math? That's wonderful. Math is wonderful because math has an outcome that you can, I've talked to people who love math, and they always say, it's the one thing I can rely on. It has a guaranteed outcome. There's not very many things in life that do have that. However, there's two sides to our brain, and our brains have one side that's more creative and one side that is more analytical. And then there's an overlap. And ideally, we want to have both pretty much in balance to be a real balanced human, right? And yet, we all are born with different abilities and strengths. So sometimes Pythagoras, for example, understood math in a more holistic manner using geometry, right? And so like if I were to open up an elementary school right now, my math class and my teachers that would be under me, they would all be teaching geometry first to have the visual of math and then learning the numbers around that visual. And that's actually how it used to be taught. So we look at melancholy. Albert Dürer. Albert Dürer is Northern Renaissance. Remember? Albert Dürer is Northern Renaissance. And he, in his, we watched this video, in this video, Melancholy, he was doing everything heretical, right? Because we talked about heresy. And this conversation right now is heretical. This particular talk is heretical because it goes outside of the mainstream view. So here we have Albert Dürer, and he's pushing the limits. He's not going to die, though, because we've passed the point of that. But he's also showing, remember the path of Venus? The path of Venus is mathematical. This is where we get into sacred geometry, is the root of our lives, and it's the art of civilization. So remember we talked about tessellations? Okay, tessellations in modern art. Tessellations in modern art and in the computer system, right, is borrowed from Islamic tiles. That's where it comes from. Now, even before that, we have Pythagoras playing with the compass, okay? But this is where it's mastered, and this is where tessellations come from. Also, sacred geometry is what makes up our world. Every living organic thing within our world is made up of the flower of life. You can study that as well, but I've showed you that. Here we just have the creation of the human embryo. Everything from the tree leaf to the human embryo to a drop of blood, when you look at it under a microscope, it is sacred geometry. And it's always the same pattern that starts it all, which is the circle, the dot, and the Vesica Piscis. The Vesica Piscis is this. This is the Vesica Piscis. This is what I would teach my second graders if I had a math class and had control of the school. What a Vesica Piscis is, because all life comes from that. And this is art, and this is math. Does this matter? You're sitting in a room filled with perspective. Everything has perspective in it. You're looking at me from a perspective. When you have a certain religion, you're looking at the world from a perspective. When you have a certain ethnicity or a certain upbringing or a certain value system, you are looking at the world through perspective, right? So anyway, perspective is analytical and it's physical. So this is also something that is a very important missing piece of our education system. It's fundamental to the human being. It's fundamental to the way we think. Okay, so when we look at the artists, they understood sacred geometry. There is no way to look at one single piece of Renaissance art without seeing sacred geometry within it. And okay, so let's talk about symbols. So I'm moving through the entire class right now. Okay, symbols are everywhere. So we go to Starbucks. Starbucks took over. Okay, there used to be small coffee shops. There aren't anymore, very few. I remember when Starbucks was a thing and everybody started to get really, really upset. And now we just accept it, right? We've conformed. And we have to, because we don't really have a lot of control. So these are Starbucks logo, comes from Sumerian art. The fish god, Is. There's fish gods and fish goddesses that originated in Sumeria. And then this is a Roman tile. There's also, which comes later, right? So everything's borrowed, and they're doing it on purpose. They didn't just go, oh, the fish goddess is so beautiful, I'm going to use it, right? In a drawing room where they all had a discussion about and votes on what symbol to use that's going to bring in the best marketing. They didn't just say, oh, we like the fish goddess because it's pretty. Is that pretty? Is the fish goddess pretty? There's a reason behind it that most people are not even aware of. We don't want to go into this world unaware. Okay, so we talked about the symbol of medicine, right? And this was on one of your tests. Okay, so the symbol of medicine, the true symbol is Asclepius, is the god of medicine, okay? And it's one snake. Now, the World Health Organization uses one snake. So they do have it right, but in America, we kind of got it wrong. And there's articles written about it, and people have apologized, truly. Because they're using the symbol of commerce, which is Hermes, okay? Which connects to the stars, and it rules Gemini, constellation Gemini. Everything connects, and the more that you can connect the dots, and the more that you learn outside of your system of your particular study, whatever that is, the smarter you become, because you can connect things together. And that's very, very important for your neural network, and as well for just being an intelligent human being. We have to know our past. The only way to know our past is through the art. Obviously, these are symbols that we use and see all the time. Okay, I talked about the outer planets. Remember I talked about the outer planets? Because all the other planets have been seen and talked about and discussed because we can see it with our naked eye, right? They're the ancients. There's even more. There's more that we haven't seen. But these are the ones that we've discovered. And Pluto, unfortunately, was deemed to be a dwarf planet. But he's not. He's one of the most powerful planets in astrology. Pluto is the underworld. He's Hades. Is Hades powerful? He's very powerful. He's the god of the underworld, and he will take your life. And he will take everyone you love. Okay? He is the darkness itself. And it's not evil. Because darkness is not evil. Death is not evil. So he is not the devil. He is just the transformer. He is the earth. He rules Scorpio. Okay? So, understanding these planets, so Pluto is not a dwarf. Okay, so Uranus is liberation, and we discover it during the time of, we have the, right, remember we have the rebellion, we have the Declaration of Independence is discovered. We have all of these things that are very powerful and create our independence. Neptune, when we had the Romantic period. Okay, so when we had all the poetry, all the great poets, the beautiful paintings of King Arthur and the Round Table, and all the beautiful things like that, romantic in that sense. So Venus, Aphrodite, was born from Uranus's testicles and is the embodiment of beauty, love, and is still used as a symbol today to describe the feminine. What do you see on the bathroom door? Right? So our ancient history is extremely important to us. Also, the archetypes, these are archetypes that are part of psychology, are also based from the Greek mythology, okay? So the Parthenon was a temple for Athena in Greece. It was dedicated to the goddess Athena during the 5th century BC. And she's the archetype of the feminine being a warrior goddess versus a masculine energy, right? Which would be more like just killing and aggressive. This is more strategic, and it's an embodiment that male or female can use. And we talked about chaos. This is a symbol for chaos. We talked about chaos theory. Remember, chaos theory in science actually comes from this. This is where it comes from. It stems from chaos. And that doesn't mean that every professor and every scientist knows that. They don't necessarily know it. And just because they don't know it doesn't make it not true. It's just that we have limits within our educational system, okay? So not everything is taught. So chaos is dark matter. Dark matter is science. Everything comes from dark matter. It doesn't matter if you're religious or not. Dark matter is the earth. So like if you have a seed and you put it into soil, it grows. You have a womb and it is seeded, a baby is born in darkness. In darkness. And that is what chaos is. Everything comes from chaos. How it is created, that is your belief system. So within the belief systems are stories. And these stories are archetypes. And they touch us deeply. And so here we have the archetype that chaos created Uranus to seed her with a Gaia, which is planet Earth. And that is how planet Earth is created. And every single culture has its own creation myth. Now we know that. Saturn is the keeper of time. He's not, now these creation myths actually go along with more, I talked about Tibetan Buddhism a little bit, but there's a lot of similarities here. Okay, so there is a clock within the Tibetan Buddhism as well, which is the timekeeper. And this here is Saturn, and he is the keeper of time. He's not a benefic. He's not a good guy, okay? But he'll make you work, and it's in your astrological makeup, so it's an archetype within yourself. And we had the philosophers come out in the Renaissance periods talking about how the Christ principle is Saturn. Now that's just his belief system, because these are all archetypes that we can correlate with ourselves. But school, education, degrees, the DMV, it's Saturn ruled. You need that ticket, or else you are going to the Hades world. Okay. So we talked a lot about symbols. We see them every single day. They're part of our lives, and they all are borrowed. Unless you're Prince, because Prince became a symbol. I still have to show you guys that. But they're just mixed symbols of the borrowed symbols, so it's nothing new. Okay. So we have sacred geometry within nature. We can go back to that because we will always go back to sacred geometry. Sacred geometry is part of everything. It is the makeup of our lives. We have Dr. Emoto. He was a pioneer in the study of water. Okay, he's an amazing guy. His work demonstrated that water is shaped by environment, thoughts, and emotions. And so he looked at water under a microscope, and he said different words to it, wrote different words, and he did his entire doctorate degree on it. So it doesn't matter if you don't believe it. It is his work, life's work. And there's lots of other people who's done similar things. So if water can change, so can absolutely everything through a vibrational frequency that we're all connected to. And this is in the Rosslyn Chapel. We talked about that. This is Gothic art. So in the Rosslyn Chapel, there are 213 cubes in 13 patterns. That's a magic number, by the way. Number 13 is a magic number. That's why they've taken it off the, I just was in Vegas and there was no, I was staying on 14. So I was actually on 13. But there is no 13th floor, right? Because there's this whole concept around it. And yet we laugh at this sort of thing, and yet they don't even put it on buildings. What's going on here? Are we being gaslighted? Are we being gaslighted? They won't put it on a building, number 13, and yet they say there's nothing mystical going on in the world. We're being gaslighted. Something's going on that we're not aware of. They were aware of it, okay? So 13 is a magic number. 13 represents the feminine, by the way. Represents the feminine when you understand numerology. It's not an evil number. Evil, yes, there's evil in the world, obviously. You know, if you go murder somebody, that's pretty darn evil. But these are just symbols, and symbols can be used in any way, okay, just like a knife. So 213 cubes and 13 patterns are carved with cymatics that are actually decoded into musical notes, and this is a cathedral in Scotland. Scotland was a very magical place, by the way. Anyone been there? The leprechauns and lots of mystical stuff going on over there. Okay. So when we look at cymatics and we look at cathedral windows, why? Why? Why do they match up like that? Nobody knows the answer, by the way. Nobody knows the answer. But if you get onto Facebook groups or you are into looking at alternative information outside of the box and the frequency fence and you want to look at it, you're going to have a lot of discussion because this is a hot topic right now, okay? All you have to do is punch it in to any of your social media and you are going to get loads of people posting all kinds of things. Because this is, whenever we don't have an answer, we want an answer. Whenever there's an empty space, it needs to be filled. We have not filled this space yet. So that is what you guys are going to do. How is this connected? How is it that they were able to create these cymatics in India on the temple wall? Even if they had rock melting technology, wait, I'm expecting you guys to remember this lecture. You guys remember this lecture, okay? Even if, let's say, they had an ability to melt rock, which is like melting cement today, it's just a little different, okay? Different ways. And we don't know that they did or didn't. How did they get the sound to create those patterns? Did they carve that by hand? Nobody knows the answer to that. Look at these. This is cymatics. This is the window. They're obviously a connection of some sort. And when you guys discover it, email it to me. Even if it's in 20 years, please. Hunt me down. Here we have the floors of the cathedrals. They obviously had understanding of some amazing things. And this is the cymatics, the musical pillars that we talked about in southern India. And this is before Pythagoras. The musical scales in Hindu are a little different, but not much. So Pythagoras did not discover the musical scales. They had been discovered from some sort of ancient civilization that we don't really know about. And art as light. So these cathedrals, these amazing cathedrals, are built around the light. So the light is designed to filter through in a certain way for a certain end or a certain means. What is light? Okay, we have this Polish scientist. He discovered the first hologram of a single light particle. Take a look. Single light particle, right? And yet we see this cross everywhere. What if, hypothetically, there was an understanding of science beyond what we have now? What if there was, but we don't know? Because why is the cross shaped like the particle of light? Is that symbolic? And I've got chills, just so you know. And do you know what chills mean when you speak on a subject? That means you're getting a download. There's some information. There's a gesture of positivity, like maybe you're headed in the right direction, right? Okay, so this is the first particle of light, and this is also the very first Christian cross, right? And it's not just Christian cross, because it's Ethiopian cross. It's crosses everywhere across the planet that symbolize something very deep and spiritual. So perhaps these symbols aren't just symbols, they actually are scientific knowledge or intuitive in some respect that we don't comprehend. And these are the cathedrals, the lights. And today, we don't make cathedrals like this. In fact, we can't. We can't even make them, okay? They're so complex, they're so beautiful, they're so beyond anything that we really have the imagination for or the capacity for, even with all of our amazing things that we have because it costs too much money, or because it wouldn't be worth the effort, or because whatever reason we don't do it. Perhaps we don't understand why it was done, therefore we don't feel any reason to build our school systems, our buildings in that manner anymore, because we don't understand why they were created that way in the first place. We don't comprehend it. This is really ancient builders. Now we're talking about nobody knows anything, okay, because there's nothing written, not one thing written, okay? The first writings are Sumerian text. Remember? The first writings of humans documented anywhere on planet Earth are Sumerian texts. This has no documentations with it. Some of these do, but. Okay, so we know that they arranged everything around the solstices. You know that. You just had Easter, by the way. Do you know that Easter is solstice? It's the first Sunday after the full moon. So it's a very ancient holiday before Christianity, right? So these are all borrowed. And they're based on the stars. We just don't really quite recognize it so much, or we don't really acknowledge it. It's not really part of the storyboard. This goes into the conspiracy. It is a conspiracy, so I'm not teaching you a conspiracy. I'm saying question. I'm saying look at. I'm saying talk about. I'm saying it's time to put down the textbook. I don't have a textbook in this class because the textbook that I have has been rewritten over and over again since the 1950s. Is it time to change? Is it? We are in a new era. We have to think differently. We cannot read these old textbooks from the 50s. It's time to change. We're going to think for ourselves from now on by looking at the art and by writing. So this is a computer chip, and this is the labyrinth. Coincidence. You guys can feel like it's a coincidence, or you can question it. That's all there is to it. There's nothing else in between. My theory, and it's just my theory, is that we have a missing piece of technology. If we come from the future into the present and we find these, I still can't get over these, by the way. Like, I can't even fathom how they work, personally. You take your phone, you put it up to something, it has an image, it goes into the computer system, and it gives you all this information. That's pretty incredible. And how fast did that hit you? What is this? What kind of technology is this? Because it has not been a part of our past at all. For a very long time, it's very, very new. So new. You guys are so familiar with it. It is so easy just to say, oh yeah, this is normal, this is normal. This is not normal. This is not normal. This is brand new, okay? This is a new world. And when we go into the future and we look back, and if we don't have these bulky phones, which we might not have because they might be a tiny little chip somewhere on your, like, here or in your brain or right there, wherever you want to put it. You're not going to have these phones anymore. What will this mean? This is baby stuff. Remember? This is baby stuff. But this is also art. This is art because life is art. This is like a 1-year-old in technology to where we're going. So buckle your seatbelts. And you guys are the people who are the forerunners of that. Okay? Not me. I'm holding the secrets of the past, and I'm sharing with you an avenue to look at it. You guys are here, okay, with the door wide open, and you're entering a realm that nobody's been before, and it's the age of Aquarius. Except for maybe they have. Except for maybe they have been here before. That's my point. Maybe technology has been here before. What is that? What is that? Is that art? This is some sort of technology they're revealing to us, and we have no clue what it is. Okay? We are in spiral time, and we've reached the end, and we're now going around the second rope. Do you understand? Okay. Sound. Art is sound. First there was the word. Sound is everything. okay? I'm speaking to you. Sound is vibration. Even deaf people can hear, right, through vibration. And here we have the pipe organs of the cathedrals. I'm just going to show you how incredible they are. They're all part of the experience. I want to show you something. What is this? It's an amplifier. Okay, that's an amplifier. That on the cathedral window is shaped like an amplifier. They had some sort of knowledge of sound. They knew how sound worked. And they amplified it across into the city, into the towns for a reason. And they were able to do that. So they had this technology. This is not even written about in a textbook anywhere that these cathedrals had an amplifying technology, similar to ours today. And then we have the wipeouts. We have wipeouts. This is where we cry. We have done it over and over and over again in civilizations. It's been done in China. It was done in America. We wiped out the Native Americans. We wiped out the Aborigines in Australia. But it started here. This was one of the major first wipeouts, where they kill everybody. They take all the sacred knowledge. They just wipe it out. They burn it. They make us forget. Okay? And this is a serious crime against humanity because it is all of our history. And it's been done repetitively over and over again. But this was the big one. This was 300 years. It's huge. And if we didn't have this, we'd have so much more information, so much more technology. They are restarting, rebooting. And what happens after this? Remember this? The Inquisitions? Okay. That's all I'm going to talk about, the Inquisitions. Let's get into religion. Because with the Inquisition comes religion. Right? That's how religion is established. It's through the Inquisition, and it's planetary. It goes across the planet, goes into the Mexican cultures, it goes into the American cultures, it goes into the Spanish cultures, and there is one dominating religion. And I'm talking about an Eastern European view. Now we have another view over in China, which is the Asian Pacific, okay? And that also had a very similar thing happen to it, but this class isn't about that. My talk isn't about that. But it had something similar happen, where they wiped out all the Tibetans, and they wiped out all the Buddhists, and they put in their technocratic society. You cannot study religion in China. You can't. Or your organs will be taken, and then you can buy them over here in America. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you need to research it. But that's not this lecture. I can't do everything. We're just going to talk about this point of view. So art is religion, because without art, there is no religion. Religion is ethereal. Religion is a concept. And that can be hard for some people. Not you guys are smart. But some people have a hard time with this. Religion is not a fact. It is not a piece of wood. It is a concept, and it has archetypes within it. And there are many, many, many different versions of it. And it is only through the art that we get to have a visual. I don't have the Christ on a cross here, but that's one of those ones that you see all the time, constantly in your face. It's a visual of an ethereal concept or a story from the past. And so art makes religion real. It makes religion real. In fact, without art, there would be no Christianity, because nobody could read a thing. So it was actually, the Bible was created and spread across the masses through imagery. And we know that. And that is why art creates religion. It also is controversial. So now we have all of our icons, because once art creates religion, religion defends itself and says we can't have icons because we can't pray to idols. So then they have to get rid of all the art. And so it's a contradiction, isn't it? Art creates religion, and yet the art is anti-religion because it's an icon. The world is full of contradictions. So we have a time period where is this iconography or is this not? Because iconography becomes illegal and you can die. Let's talk about angels. I love angels. But do angels exist? They're ethereal. We don't see them. I don't see them fluttering around. I might feel them with my heart or something, but they're not physical either. And so it is the artwork that creates a vision for us to have. These are the first ever recorded images of angels. They're called the seraphim, and they're in the Bible. They're the very, very first angels to be recorded in time. They're quite beautiful. And then we have artists who talk about them. And this was on the test as well. This is seraphim angels. They don't have any body. They're just heads and wings. And over time, they develop and they change. And then we have poetry from angels. Poetry, Rainer Rilke. Every angel is terrifying. And then we have the hierarchy that develops within religion and angels. And so everything starts, but look how the art creates it. Look at the art. The art is telling you the information. You having a visual experience. I'm running out of time. I have a lot to cover. So then the angels turn into archangels. They didn't start as archangels. They developed. They developed through the art. And they become a prolific part of our cultures and time. And then we have the beautiful Renaissance time, which takes the angelic realm and it really amplifies it. And then we have the pun, the counter reaction. Remember how art is either a reaction or a reflection of our world? We have Hieronymus Bosch and his pun on religion. We also have the skill set that comes with art, because if you can show off your skill set, you're pretty darn cool. When we talked about how the printing press was made, and this is an important figure in your timeline. Don't forget him. Okay, Albert Dürer. He created the printing press. He became the first independent artist outside of the rule of the kings and queens or out of the patronage of the rich people. And he could just be independent. Of course, we have the superheroes of art, and we all know them. Okay. Leonardo, he was a rebel. He was not liked, and he was not conformed. We have Michelangelo, who was more adaptable and agreeable with the church, what they wanted. And we have Raphael. And his most famous painting, so if you ever see this painting, you know it's Raphael. And you know what it is. These are all the Greek philosophers, and they are being revived, brought back to life. Okay, Botticelli created the Venus painting. So whenever you walk into a hotel room or someone's house and they have a painting of Venus, you can be like, oh, that's Botticelli, okay? Because you're smarter now. And it's very important. It's very important. This Birth of Venus painting is so popular. It is so famous. It will never go away. It will never go away. It is ultimately the symbol of the Venusian element, which is the feminine. Okay, so we talk about art and beauty becomes a subject instead of the Christian storyline. And Botticelli is one of the ones who brings in the beauty. We have art as drama. It is through the time period. This was created as a reformation to bring back people to the church. We needed something dramatic. We needed to make a movement, and art was the most powerful way. Now we have AI. But back then, the only way to do this was through art. Art as excess, right? And then we have the reflection of the society at that time, which is the greed and the obnoxious nature of the elite. We still have obnoxious elites, but we have a middle class to fill in the gap. Back then they didn't, right? Remember? So the Rococo period is what we created or spurred or inspired or pushed the French Revolution, which, by the way, was inspired by the American Revolution. And you guys know that. And it's the excess that makes us laugh. It's the wigs. But we might laugh at ourselves right now anyway, so be careful what we laugh at. It's excess. It is debauchery. Remember, I talked about debauchery is when you take a little of something that's good and you just have a little too much of it. So music, art, and everything coincide at the same exact time. This is very important to remember. Whenever you're writing any like history or you are in another class and you're talking about a different subject matter and you have a time period, guess what you guys are going to do? You're going to relate it to the art of that time period because that's how much smarter you are from this class alone, which is so fabulous, and I can't wait for you guys to go out in the world and to be able to connect the dots to whatever you're learning to art. Right? We have the opera, which is the opera house became a place for only people with money. This is where the poor really started to get jealous. And then we have the thinkers. Okay, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. This is important today. Look at our political landscape. Look at our social networks and look at our cancel culture. Okay? How relevant is this today? By the way, Pluto just moved into Aquarius, where it was when this was written. So there is a clock. There is a cosmic clock. We are in that cosmic clock, and we are experiencing it right now. So we are reliving this time right now in spiral time, so it's slightly different. But we are in a revolution. You guys are that revolution. René Descartes. He talked about the split, the Cartesian split, the mind and the matter. And it's odd. It's a strange concept, you know. And mind being spirit as well as mind, because he related the two together. And it is odd. But at the time, you think prejudice is odd? You think sexism is odd? It is. Why are you treating females or people of different cultures as like animals? They're not. They're the same as you. And he brought that into people's awareness. And by the way, his books were illegal. So if you were reading one of his books at the time, you might be beheaded. You would be. But there was a whole gathering. Okay, so thank God we are not in those times. And you guys can gather and have conversations without dying. And you can thank the French Revolution for that. So we have neoclassicalism, we have realism, we have romanticism, and this is all part of a breakaway from the Christian sort of armor hand, you know, the rules. Even though they still exist, you still have a little more freedom to express yourself. And we have some amazing queens that come on board, or they are empresses, actually, and they take charge and they make some big changes. Even though they're still filthy rich and the people are still filthy poor, they do things that are radical. And Catherine the Great is one of those. She brought in all the female artists. She made a clarion call. She said, if you're a female artist, come to my castle and paint, and I will hang your work up. And then she had museums, and people walked through, and that's when female artists become a thing, and writers, and thinkers, and also females going to school. She created that. Okay, that was in Russia. These are the female artists. We have Queen Victoria, who is also one of those leaders, good or bad. She did good in both. But she also created this huge feminist movement. And this is where we have really the coming on of females taking over as far as like being independent. They are not independent. They can still be, they can't divorce or anything. They're still owned by either their father or their husband, and they don't get any inheritance, but it's the beginning. And then let's just go back to the reset real quick. The reset. Remember I talked about how the Inquisition is a reset? The Inquisition, they kill everything, they wipe everything out. Well, okay, that's over. And now we start to develop ourselves again, because this is how humanity goes. Okay, we develop, and then there's a war or there's something with the controllers, and they just take everything, all of our knowledge, and they wipe it out, right? So they keep doing that. Now here we start to build up again, because there hasn't been a reset yet, because there's not World War I yet. This is before World War I. So we have the Inquisition, then we have World War I. Everything in between is our intelligence and us expanding consciousness, us developing, us re-remembering, us bringing it back. Then we have the World Fairs, where we show it off. We show it off, okay? Late 1800s. World War I has not happened yet to destroy everything. There is something here that I want you guys to remember forever and ever and ever and ever. This is the moment in time where the timeline split in your history. We get to go one way or we get to go another, okay? Free energy or a control system. And we have a control system. But there was a moment of time, and it was here. And you can do the research, and it's in the art, because it's all through the art. So we have the artist. They are painting the gravity of the situation. They are painting the reality of the situation, which is heavy, okay? We think life is hard now. It is, but it was heavier then, and it was difficult. And so people want to escape. They want to escape into the romance. They want to escape into idealism, and that's where poetry comes. That's where William Blake comes. That's where William Wordsworth comes. This is beautiful, romantic, not in like romance, getaways, but in fantasy, fairy tale kind of things. And this is how we escape reality. This is when Neptune's discovered. Remember, I talked about that. And then we have the turn of the century, which is not a pretty thing. And this is eliminated from schools. The turn of the century is not a pretty thing. This is when we have the orphan trains. This is when we have child labor. This is when we're about to go to World War I. This is World War I. This is an intense time, and it's a dark time. It's the Industrial Revolution, and everything gets ugly. Because here comes technology with no rules. So you have all the cars, you have all the environmental problems with it as well. And so we have the counter to that, which is the artists who say, no, I just want to go out and paint the flowers. It's so beautiful outside. And they are countering the Industrial Revolution through their artwork. And they can now. They can. They can explore. And remember futurism. Futurism is where we're looking at the future. And we're saying, wait a minute, the world is split in two right now. Do you see the world being split in two? Generally, there's a split. It's called a bifurcation in time. There's a split. We have people who are holding on to the past, who want to hold, you could say organic, natural, earth, and there are people who are running to the future. Get a chip in our brains, and let's do the AI, and let's live forever, and let's extend our lives, and forget about anything that is natural, right? And then, there's borderline, of course. But we're definitely in that place. We were there then, too. We were there then, too. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. So we have like the advertising, and the art becomes commerce. Art becomes commerce, and it begins to change. And it changes, it's a reflection of our culture. And each fad that comes through, which that was what these are, there are fads, just like we wear jeans, that's a fad, or whatever. Until this point where art dies. Art dies. And I swear art dies. And you can argue with me, and I would love to hear your argument. But art dies as it was before, meaning that it is no longer about the subject that is being painted or created. It is about the action of the art. And therefore, me waving my hand in the air is now art. Everything's art. There is no definition. And it can be reborn into something new, and it is reborn into something new. Remember the toilet? This is also a reaction to the war, because it is it's opposite of common sense. It's Dadaism, and they're actually kind of going a little mentally ill at this time, because if anybody wants to know about what World War I was like, you can watch the Netflix series Women of War. And it will give you a little glimpse because nobody had a choice. If you were a man, you were on the front line or they were going to shoot you. So you were either going to shoot or be dead. You don't have a choice. It was a nasty thing, and everybody should study it so they understand how bad actually World War I was. But this was a horrible time. Okay, and this is also a time when women took over men's jobs. So even though they didn't have the right to vote, they were doing all of the men's work anyway. So this is a really good TV show, and you could love it, and it will show you that. This is a reaction to that. People are going a little crazy, and so let's move on. So we talked about this aspect of how do we get from here to here. And is this the same thing? Well, we're all human. We're all human, just expressing ourselves. We have Kandinsky and we have minimalism. And this comes in, here we are, coming to the end of the talk, coming to the end of the class, coming to the end of time. We are at the end of time. I know it's dramatic. We have surrealism with psychology. And anyone who ever takes a psychology class, please write about this. This painting that Dali gave to Freud, because so many professors don't even know this, because everything is so separated from each other. And yet surrealism, and this was the painting that Dali brought, it's Metamorphosis of the Narcissus, and that is actually from the Greeks, because the god is Narcissus, who looks at himself in the mirror so long that something happens. Okay, I don't remember the story. Right? It all comes back to the Greeks. It's all connected to psychology, it's all connected to art, and it's all connected to our modern day. These are the three superheroes of the surrealist movement. And I just kind of want to go through here a little fast because I want to get to the end. Pop art, this is commerce. This is commercial art. Now, if you want to be an artist, you can be a commercial artist. Okay, go ahead. This is where it starts. Pop art is sort of like that place where commercial art begins. And then we talked about, this is what I want to talk about for a second, which is visionary art. Because that's where I ended last time, and I kind of want to just go back here real quick. The difference between surrealist art and visionary art, okay? Surrealism was during a time of Freudian psychology. It is a time where we're starting to talk about our dreams, which, by the way, has never been done before. Maybe in the Egyptian time, there's a little remnants of dreams, but not much, okay? This is not. This is when psychedelics were introduced into America, and when that sort of like experience happened to the collective of having an awakening of how we are all connected in some sort of way. And there was a great consciousness expansion. And people started to travel a lot to India. And like my mother went to India when she was 19. I went to India. I actually just got a Tonka painting that she got 50 years ago in India. It was a big thing, to travel to India and to study Buddhism or different types of Eastern philosophy. And it actually did expand consciousness because we're looking at something from a different perspective. Okay, I just had a friend who came back from Eastern Asia, and some of these are his images that he sent me. So we have the dragon lines, okay? So all of this area of the Eastern Asian area is full of dragons and Buddhas. Dragons and Buddhas. You go to Europe, you get Jesus Christ on the cross and Mother Mary's. You go to Asia, you get dragons and Buddhas. And these are, it's really interesting and it's really beautiful to see all the different cultures, okay? There's not one right or wrong way, but it's really nice to see how the human being is expressed in different manners. So these are quite beautiful. I just wanted to show you that. So amateurs look for inspiration. The rest of us just show up and get to work. That's Chuck Close, and I hope you always remember that. That's also the Saturn principle. Neptune would be inspiration. Well, you could lie around all day for that. But if you really want to do something, you're just going to get up and get to work. So today's art. So this is today's art, and this is where we're headed. We're going to be in the realm of AI, and whether you like it or not, and you can kick and scream, and I can kick and scream, and it doesn't matter. I can go live on a mountaintop, which I did, and I still can't escape it. We are in it. We are in the belly of the dragon. We are in the belly of the beast, and we need to deal with it. And the way that we deal with it is by knowledge, by knowing our past, so that we can make sure that we are conscious every step of the way, so that we don't become a hybrid. We don't become a zombie. We don't become a robot, right? We're human. What makes us human? Our creativity, our art. That's what makes us human. So we can use these tools that are at our disposal. Like I can make a portrait of myself in 2 seconds on AI if I want. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we also have to figure out how to find that inner spark, because that's probably not going to make a spark happen inside of you. It might for 2 seconds. But you guys all will find your way through this, okay? And I talked about the Vara Act. It's very important. And what is art? This was in my last class. I asked everybody to get up and just write what is art. And we have lots of things here. We have inspiration, power, freedom, technology, expression, dead, and on. Technology. So art is everything. And I really appreciate everybody being in this class. And I appreciate you guys listening to me ramble on. And hopefully you took away something special from every not maybe every segment, but at least a couple of them that you're going to bring into the world, and it will change your life in some sort of way. So that's it on the review.